Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and I wanted to do is just record my thoughts on the border wall for a moment. And it's really just my thoughts on immigration in general, mainly because this has become quite the conversation now that the government has shut down, and basically all because of this one particular issue. So I guess I'll start off by saying, do I support the idea of constructing a border wall or not? I don't. Mainly because immigration is a little bit more complicated than just the southern border. Most statistics that I've heard show that basically, as far as border crossings go, they've shrank. And basically, all the kind of things that people are concerned with, as far as border crossings, are actually less a problem than they used to be. So it seems nonsensical to spend a lot of money, billions of dollars, to create something over for a particular problem that is declining. Now, again, I'm not saying there's two problems: border crossings, but there's other ways that people necessarily will come to the country without going through sort of the standard process. It could be through tourist visas that get expired, and through other methods. Actually, I think it's mostly tourist visas. Does that mean we should shut down tourist visas? Not at all. I'm all for more tourist visas, but we'll come back to that. But when you think about illegal immigration, or basically just not going through the standard process, what is really happening here? It's a black market. Okay, and why do black markets happen? Why do black markets happen in drugs? Why do black markets happen in sex work? Because it's too hard to do it legally. It's too hard to do it. It doesn't even have to be illegal. Like if you tax something enough and you make it very, very expensive, let's say like cigarettes in New York City, people will buy it in black markets. People sell loose cigarettes in New York City because it's a lot cheaper to buy them in Jersey and then sell them one at a time to somebody in New York City because they're so expensive in New York City because of the taxes. So cigarettes aren't banned, but black markets still formed because you've made it too prohibitive to do it legally, to do it through proper channels. So black markets don't only form when there's an outright prohibition, but even when there's very sort of high limits, high barriers on something. But the problem with black markets is they become more dangerous. Okay, when we talk about drugs, you see more overdoses because drugs are impure, because black markets have very poor quality control. When you take a look at sex work, it basically diseases get spread because there's a lot less quality control. I mean, you take a look at a lot of these industries in places where they're more legal, where the access is more open, you have much higher quality control because you have transparent businesses operating in it that have legal liabilities, that have financial interests at stake because they're operating within the legal system. So they're going to take much more precautions over making sure they have a product that's what the customers want, and then that their employees aren't subject to murder and dying of diseases. And then the same thing with cigarettes. I mean, you saw what happened with Eric Garner, where basically by selling loose cigarettes, he lost his life. And this is something that happens when when you create that sort of prohibition structure. You have again, lower quality of life, but then it also puts it into the sector where just more violence in general. Because oftentimes black market providers, not only are they providing you with a questionable quality product, but you have nowhere else to go, but they're going to use violence to enforce their arrangements because they don't have access to the traditional legal system. So you're going to have more violence and worse outcomes for people on both sides of the issue, on the people providing and consuming the source of goods and people who are not. And the same thing's happening with immigration. By making immigration very difficult to do, you have, this whole industry of coyotes and human trafficking, trafficking people across the border. And that results in a lot of people dying in the process of crossing. And when they do cross, they end up sometimes on other people's property, destroy their property, end up in confrontations, they get people killed on both sides. People who live here who just, one day accidentally found the wrong people on their lawn, and people who are crossing who are just looking for a better opportunity. They both end up in a worse situation. And that could be easily fixed by just making the process easier and more open and more available. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't check people to make sure that they don't bring diseases or that they haven't committed crimes. Most people I think would still support sort of reasonable measures in travel. Okay, I mean, Let's say you had a world without any countries and whatnot, you'd probably have airports sit there and require you to go through third party agencies and do these kind of checks just to make sure that they so that way they protect themselves from legal liability, from transporting diseases and crime, etc. So there's reasonable checks that are just for general safety purposes, but just to limit people, when you limit something that people are demanding, you're going to create a robust black market, and that's what's happening on the border, and it's creating violence, it's creating bad outcomes, and it's not fixed by a border wall because you're not changing the demand. You're just erecting another barrier, which just means that the black market was going to build up that much more. Okay, it's like people say, oh, well, we need to build a border wall to save lives. But that's like what people say when they want to fund the DEA more to save lives. Oftentimes, when you ratchet up the drug war, you don't save lives. You lose more lives because you lose people who's enforcement lives, you lose people in the drug trades lives, you lose more lives because you're just introducing more conflict to the situation. And that's what would happen with more than likely with just a bigger border wall or more robust border wall. What you need to do is address the actual demand for immigration and the process by which that is available for people, so the black market doesn't have to exist. So that way there's ways that address these issues, so that way you can and then basically the only people who wouldn't really be able to get in would be people who don't pass those basic checks, but it would be so few that enforcement would be very, very low cost, very, very easy to do. Okay. Basically if and there's also a psychological aspect to it. The harder you make something to do, the more people want to do it. So there is a psychological aspect where, chances are if you make immigration very easy, you might actually have about more of an equilibrium of those who want to, because they know they can do it later. There's different aspects to it. I don't know if that quite applies as much to immigration as it would to, let's say, drugs and alcohol, where basically when you legalize alcohol, you might have an immediate surge of use, but then in the long run, it kind of actually drops because the mystique is gone, the reverse psychology is gone. So, yeah. So all I'm saying is black markets suck, and the best way to get rid of black markets is to let people transact in goods and services in an open, above board process, which means you can't be taxing them and regulating them to the point where it's prohibitive to attain. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. If you guys like what I have to say, go check out alexmerced.com to find all my different projects and things that I'm doing that you guys might enjoy. So have a great day.